someone, I know she brought a couple people here specifically to see her, I believe, which is great. And she is a yoga therapist, a teacher, a mentor. She's passionate for the integration of yoga and body-mind psychology as a path to holistic healing and self-discovery. I'd like to invite you all to give another, you guys are awesome last time, so we can do it again. Huge, round, excited group of applause for Shivani. Yoga and the mind-body connection.
So my name is Shivani, and I'm a yoga therapist. I've been a practicing Phoenix Rising yoga therapist for 7 years, and I work with individuals and couples and groups. What I'm really interested in as a yoga therapist and as a yoga teacher is to create a safe space where students can explore their inner experience, the rich inner landscape of what's happening for them on the mat. And the alignment is important, but I want to kind of shift the paradigm and shift the focus from the external appearance to the internal experience. This is one of my favorite sutras from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. The seen is for the sake of the seer. So what does that really mean? The seen is everything that's manifest, right? It's our body, it's our mind, it's the world that we live in. And so what this is saying is that all of that, the whole world, the whole universe, all of our bodies, all of our minds, are for the sake of the seer. And the seer is the true self. The seer is the part of us that is pure and eternal. And what I love about this quote is that it recognizes the separateness between the body and the mind and the source and the self. But what it's trying to get us to understand is that all of this stuff is here for the purpose of us knowing ourselves on a really deep level. Okay. So I have been practicing Yoga Vedanta for over a decade, and through that time I've always been taught that who I truly am, is not my body. And I do believe that, but the work of Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy has taught me that my body is wise beyond measure, and that the body is an incredible tool for self-discovery. And what Phoenix Rising is really all about is present moment awareness. It's really simple, but it's not easy, right? It's about just being with our breath and being with our body in the moment. So Phoenix Rising uses touch and assisted movement and dialogue to do that. So present moment awareness, and this is a really great quote from the developers of trauma-sensitive yoga at the Justice Research Institute in Brookline, Massachusetts. We consider present moment experience to be physical and body-based, not intellectual or theoretical. And so what holistic practices do, like Phoenix Rising or like trauma-sensitive yoga, or hopefully yoga in general, is they get us present in our bodies, and then we can start to gain and harness skills of mindfulness, presence, and awareness. And these are all skills that are required in a process of empowerment, of transformation, of growth, and of healing. So in Phoenix Rising land, we believe that traumas and memories and emotions are physiological experiences. And I think that's a really important point to make. And maybe you all already believe that, but a lot of people out there might not have made that connection yet, that memories, emotions, and traumas are physiological, which means that they don't exist just in the mind and the neurons of the brain, but in the tissues, the very tissues of our physical being and in sensation. What I have really come to believe through this work of Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy is that in order to fully heal and to come to know ourselves deeply, the body can no longer be the elephant in the room as we speak about our feelings. Phoenix Rising really acknowledges the interconnectedness of our body, our mind, our spirit, our emotions, and most importantly, champions the client's or the person's own inner knowing. So it's a non-diagnostic and non-prescriptive approach. So why is a holistic approach like Phoenix Rising or like many other, why are holistic approaches so important? So one reason is because trauma is holistic. Trauma affects us holistically. Of course, on the level of the emotions and the spirit, but also on the level of the mind. Trauma can cause neuroanatomical changes to the brain. It can reduce, for example, the volume of the hippocampus, one of our memory centers. And we know it affects us on the level of the body. It changes the functioning of the nervous system, the endocrine system, the digestive systems, the immune system. And another reason why a holistic approach is so important is because trauma is universal. It doesn't just affect a few of us, it really affects all of us in various ways, right? And to various degrees. And I'm not sure if I have the quote here, but yeah. Dr. Peter Levine wrote this incredible book called Waking the Tiger, and he's written a number of other books. And he uses the animal model of why is it that animals in the wild, like an impala being chased by a tiger, experiences the same kind of threat responses that we do, but then once that experience has passed, doesn't have lingering trauma. And why is that? And why do we as humans become traumatized and start to have traumatic disorders like PTSD and other complex trauma disorders? And what he realized, or what he believes, is that trauma is a really natural process that our nervous system goes through and needs to go through in order for us to survive. But that trauma and the experience of it is like all this energy is immobilized in the body, and it needs to so that we can fight or flight. But if that natural process is thwarted in some way and we go into a submit response, all that energy is locked down. And it can't be free to move out and be expressed, and it gets frozen in the body. And so I have another quote here, I'm not sure I have it up there, but he considers PTSD symptoms to be incomplete physiological responses suspended in fear. And so how do we start to thaw that out? How do we start to let those natural processes move through the body so that we can heal? We know that traditional talk-based therapies that focus on cognition and behavior are insufficient for treating trauma on their own. And one of the reasons why is because people with severe trauma often dissociate. They disconnect from their bodies. They disconnect from the embodied experience of sensation and emotion. And so it's very possible to verbally recount traumatic events from the past in a disconnected and disembodied way. And I've absolutely witnessed this with my clients. I offer talk-based sessions and I offer body-based sessions. And what I've noticed is that clients can sometimes speak about really severe, really, really scary traumatic events that have happened in their lives and speak about them and feel like, yeah, I'm really processing a lot. This is good work. I'm really processing a lot of this. And then in a couple sessions, we'll do a body-based session. And the same stuff they were just speaking about, they realized, wow, it's all still in here. I still feel it inside. Right? I think it's important to note, however, that yoga, even trauma-sensitive yoga, and yoga therapy can absolutely be triggering for people with trauma. And the reason why is because we're inviting them and we're encouraging them to get present to themselves and to get present to their bodies and to get present to perhaps the feelings inside that they've been cutting off from as a protection mechanism. On the other hand, it's also been shown that trauma-sensitive yoga approaches and other holistic approaches like yoga therapy are increasingly effective in the healing of trauma. And this is because they start that thawing process, right, of all that energy that's kind of blocked in the body and suspended in fear. And they also teach people skills like mindfulness, right? Mindfulness and curiosity about what's happening now gets the frontal lobes turned on. And that's a really big part of healing trauma because those frontal lobes get turned off when the smoke detector and the fire alarm of the amygdala are going off all the time. They also teach people simple grounding exercises, which are so important, right? Breath awareness. And also how to work and to kind of gain more capacity to work within what's called in a sort of psychological, clinical terminology, a window of tolerance, sort of a place in between hyper-arousal and hypo-arousal. And in Phoenix Rising, we call that working with the edge. And so the edge is exploring feelings, sensations, emotions, or even like real physical sensations in the body in between too much and too little. If it's too much, we get overwhelmed. The system gets flooded, we're overwhelmed. We can't hang out there, it's not sustainable, right? And if we go the other way, not a lot's happening. So it's that kind of rich middle ground where it really entrains us with present moment awareness. And Michael Lee, who's the founder of Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy in the mid-'80s, said that real transformation can't happen until we meet ourselves at an edge, right? So what I want to do right now, I just want to pause for a second, and if it's comfortable for you to do so, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes. And what's interesting from just standing up here and looking out at you is that you all shifted your seat when you closed your eyes, right? Almost like there's this desire to kind of align ourselves as we tune in. So just for a few moments, notice what it's like to be sitting here with your eyes closed. There's no right or wrong. I'm not looking for you to have any particular kind of experience. You don't have to try to create anything. Just get curious about the shift in perspective as you close your eyes and what you begin to notice. And now start to get curious about your breath. And no need to create any particular way of breathing. Just notice how it feels to breathe right now. Our breath is such an incredible indicator of what's happening for us internally on an emotional, psychic, energetic level. Is your breath flowing freely? Is it getting stuck in some places? Is it kind of moving around tight places in the body? And if it is, start to get curious about those places and what might be showing up there. So just breath, body, right here, right now. And let's begin to shift your awareness now to your physical body. And when I said that, notice if your awareness went to any particular places in your body. And if it did, allow your awareness to come fully into those places. So to whatever extent it's possible, we're taking on a curious and compassionate witness perspective, just checking in and noticing what's happening now. And then over the next few moments, just scan your awareness through your whole being, through your whole body, and notice if anything else is showing up. Thoughts, feelings, memories. It's all valid. All of this stuff, we believe from the Phoenix Rising perspective, is coming up for a reason. It's the body's way of communicating with you. I'm also guessing that there's something that called you to be here at this event this weekend. And so I want you to just get a little clearer on what that is. What's that intention for being here, and what is it that you're really hoping to receive? And then the next step is, how might you start to manifest that? How might you put that into action? And my wondering about that is, do you need to be with yourself in a particular kind of way to support that? And then take a big breath in through your nose and let your breath fall out your mouth like a sigh. And you're welcome to take 1 or 2 more breaths like that if you like. And then what I'll invite you to do, just before you open your eyes again, is to, as much as possible, to whatever extent it's possible, stay in this curious, compassionate witness perspective throughout the rest of my talk. And be curious about what resonates for you and what doesn't, and maybe why. What you notice in your body, right? What you notice in sensation, or even thoughts or memories or anything at all that comes up for you. We call this whole body listening. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and just kind of take a moment to transition your awareness back to the room, but still centered inside your embodied experience. So this is one Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy technique that's pretty simple, and it's just a way of slowing down and checking in. Okay. So what is the wisdom of the body? Really simply, the wisdom of the body is whatever your body is telling you right now. Right? Have you ever had an experience where you feel something in your heart, like so strong, and you know it in your heart, which might be different than your mind, and you go for it and you have the courage to trust in that, and you follow it, and what that experience was like to be aligned with yourself in that way? And then on the flip side, have you ever had an experience where you feel something in your gut and your body's telling you, and it's just like kind of a hankering, but for whatever reason you get up here and it starts to go around and around and around, and you start to analyze it and make it logical, right? And then choose for whatever reason to go against that gut feeling. And what was that like, right? Probably a really different experience. So many of you are probably familiar with Dr. Gabor Mate, who's a Vancouver-based physician. And he wrote a book called When the Body Says No. Has anybody read that? I highly recommend it. And he presents research in that book about sort of innate compulsive behavioral patterns, trauma, and stress with disease and illness. And Gabor Mate is a really incredible speaker, and he's an advocate for the body-mind connection, and he really warns us that if we cut off from our body's signals, from the body's wisdom, and we ignore the stressors that are taking place in our lives, or we take care of everyone except for ourselves, right? If we never say no to things that don't feel right to us, then eventually our body says no for us in the form of injury or illness or disease. Mm-hmm. The body keeps score. This is Bessel van der Kolk, who is I believe he's the founder and the medical director of the Trauma Center at the Justice Research Institute in Brookline, Massachusetts, and a huge supporter of trauma-sensitive yoga that was actually founded at that center. So now that we know what the body's wisdom is, why is it that we cut off from the body's wisdom? We do this for all sorts of reasons. We all do. And those of us who have experienced really traumatic events and perhaps have a trauma disorder of some kind will cut off from the body as a protection mechanism, just called dissociating. And we all dissociate to various degrees. I'll give you an example from my personal experience. About 4 months ago, I was teaching meditation up at Wonderlust in Whistler, a big music and yoga festival, and I was actually teaching on the psychology of the chakras, and I was teaching on the crown chakra when something cracked me in the head and knocked me out, and just a sort of freak accident. And it resulted in a mild traumatic brain injury. And so when I went to the hospital, I was telling the doctor, okay, so I just have this statistics course that I'm taking right now, and I've got 2 lectures left, and then I just have to do 1 project and then a final exam. It's only like 3 hours, so I'll just do that, and then I'll just cut down on teaching like a little bit. And he's like, he took me by the shoulders. And this is even me, you know, someone who's a practitioner of body-mind connection and yoga and a yoga therapist and supporting my clients in this way all the time. And I was kind of power through. And he took me by the shoulders and looked me in the eyes and said, no, you're actually not going to do that. You have a brain injury, and you're going to go home and completely unplug. And I was like, okay, unplug my computer. And he's like, yeah, you're not going to text, and you're not going to email. You're not going to stare at your computer at all. You're not going to surf the web. You're not going to read books. You're not going to watch TV or watch movies. And I was like, okay, how long do I do that for? And I ended up doing that for 2 weeks. Right? And kind of staying at home too, because I was pretty incapacitated from this head injury. And so I literally laid in my bed with earplugs because I was super sensitive to sound and to light. And I laid in bed with an eye pillow and earplugs for 2 weeks. I challenge you to do that for 1 entire day, right? Just 24 hours of just being with yourself, right? How quickly I realized how quickly I longed for distraction, right? And I have to be entirely honest, I've kind of fallen back into my old pattern of like checking Instagram or going on Facebook and updating my yoga page and all of that stuff. And it's not to say that those things are not things that we should do, but it really, really showed me how much we are distracted from simply being present with ourselves. And I'll tell you what, being with myself in that way, sort of like an induced, forced meditative state that I was put in, it was really, really confronting, totally confronting. Like all my stuff came up to the surface, right? But it was one of the most incredible learning experiences I've had in my entire life. And so in that way, it was a total blessing, right? So I'm gonna give you some takeaways, take-home exercises in learning to listen, but they'll be short. They won't be 2 weeks of totally unplugging, so don't worry. Yeah. So I spoke a little bit about dissociating and how we all do that in various ways. And I witness this absolutely in my clients, and I witness it in yoga students as well. You know, I have an hour class or a 75-minute class, and I want to really fit in a little meditation in there. So I've got like 5 minutes to do meditation. And I noticed that a lot of students are uncomfortable closing their eyes for just a few moments, and for a few minutes. People start to get really fidgety and open their eyes and they're looking around like, you know, what am I supposed to be doing here? Well, you're just supposed to be. Just supposed to be with yourself and with whatever's coming up, right? So we long for, you know, texting or the computer, or we reach for substances and things that help to numb us out. And dissociating is really effective for people. It really helps us move away from pain, right? Cutting off is really effective. That's why we do it. Because then we don't have to be with all the stuff. We don't have to be confronted with all of the feelings that are inside. But when we're cut off from the pain, we're also cut off from the joy, right? We're cut off from the ability to have an experience of the potential of all there is to experience in life, a full experience, right? And when we're cut off from the body's wisdom, we're cut off from our internal signals about when there's too much stress building, or our internal compass for what feels really right and authentic to us. So if we're cut off from that, then we also don't have the capacity to create healthy boundaries or to practice self-care. So this is again Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Trauma is a disease of not being able to be present, right? And so we can see why tuning into the body is so important for people struggling with trauma, because again, we remind ourselves that present moment awareness is physiological, body-based experience, grounded in the felt sense of the moment. What I'm going to offer you now are some tools, one you've already experienced from Phoenix Rising, but one that's maybe a little more accessible than pausing for even 5 minutes. I'm going to invite you to I'm going to challenge you to take 3, let's say, 20-second awareness breaks. And I've had students say, so I take 21-second awareness breaks. And you can do that if you want, but what I mean is take 1, 2, 3, or 5 20-second awareness breaks throughout your day. And the best way to do this is to set an alarm so that you don't forget, because life will start to happen and you'll get busy, right? So you set an alarm, and no matter what you're doing, unless you're driving, don't close your eyes. But if you're sitting in front of your desk, maybe especially if you're sitting in front of your desk, just stop whatever you're doing, close your eyes, and check in. And you can set an alarm for 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and do kind of like what we just did. Notice your breath, notice your body, notice your thoughts and feelings. And you don't have to do anything with that information. You don't have to try to shift it or change it or make it better. It's just an opportunity in deepening awareness in the moment and learning to listen to whatever it is your body might be telling you. And I just want to say quickly that I'm curious to see what effect 20 seconds can have on your day. You know, like we often say, like maybe we don't have 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour to sit and meditate, I'm really curious to see what effect 20 seconds can have. And if you take that once or twice or 3 times throughout the day, it can be profound, absolutely profound. And you may find that when you start to practice that little by little, that it becomes easier to check in, and that might become, hanging out in the morning or in the evening before bed for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, right? Learning to listen. The other thing I want to challenge you to do, this is from the Bhagavad Gita. The other thing I want to challenge you to do is start to learn to listen to the wisdom of your body by tuning into those gut feelings that you have or those heart feelings that you have. We know the heart has its own nervous system that sends signals to the brain, and the gut is just filled with neuropeptide cell receptors that Dr. Candace Pert calls the molecules of emotion. And so the point is that the body knows, and that the body remembers and is trying to communicate with you all the time. So the second challenge is to follow those gut feelings, whatever word you want to call them, whether it's your inner wisdom or your inner guidance or the light within or your instincts or your gut feelings or your intuition, whatever it is, practice taking a step, like baby bite, one baby step, action towards aligning with that. Is that doable? Is that doable?
Yeah.
So that's my challenge to you. And if you only do one, if there's one takeaway, set an alarm for 1 time a day for 20 seconds and check in. Okay? So I believe that's all I have. This is from Elisa Cobb, who wrote The Forgotten Body, and she was a very influential, is a very influential teacher to me. She was one of the co-directors of Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy. She's retired now. As we begin to recognize the subtle and often metaphorical meanings in the poetic language of our bodies, transformation is already beginning. So thank you guys so much for your presence and for listening. And this is where you can find me, shivaniwells.com, and that's the website for Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy if you're curious. Thank you.